So now we're going to talk about columns and rows. And I'm going to do that by showing you a spreadsheet first and see how this is sort of complemented using Bootstrap. And I think this is where they thought of it, but can't say for sure, but I do know that this is how they use it. Now, when you look at a spreadsheet, always you'll see is columns, right? So column A, B, and C, and so on, and then rows, 1 to however many. This is actually very nice for formatting because we can, especially in a spreadsheet, we can make them bigger. We can add more columns and we can add more rows. Now with spreadsheets, it's typical to scroll left and right, but websites, it's not. Websites, you usually just go up and down. That's what's typically done. Yes, you've probably seen websites that you scroll left and right, but you don't see them very often. So what that means is we want to actually fix the idea of how many columns we have, right? So right now I'm going to go to 12 columns all the way across in this spreadsheet just to illustrate the point. So right now it's 12 columns across. Now, what does this container representation look like? Like, what do you think of this right here? Is this a container or container fluid? Hopefully, if you compare that to this, it looks a lot more like container fluid. And that's what it is. Right now, it's completely flush to the entire page from left to right, but there's 12 columns in here, right? So that was denoted by when I actually made it bigger. You can see in that right corner there, it says 12 columns. You can also count them if you wanted. But this is how Bootstrap works. It's already divided up into 12 columns. So when you're imagining these containers, just think of them already in these 12 columns. They're already there. They're made there for us. So the amount of rows doesn't matter, but it's the columns that do. So let's go ahead and actually create a similar idea inside of Bootstrap. First off, I'm going to do it inside of the container. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and underneath this alert primary, I'm going to make a new div class of row, right? So I'm creating a row here, much like in this. And then inside of that row, I have columns. So I'm going to make a first one being a column. And I'm actually going to put this alert back inside of this column. And now I'm going to get rid of that old alert. Okay, so I have one row, one column, and one container. Now what's going to happen? If I refresh in here, it looks exactly the same. Okay, what if I made another column? I'm just going to go ahead and copy that column and just make another one. This time I'm going to just change the coloring by changing the class to secondary, right? So the alert secondary, alert primary, so on. So now I have some variance, so we can see it. I refresh. Whoa, there's 2 columns in there, and they're taking up this entire container, right? Because these columns are inside of a row, this is how it will work. Now, if I do this 12 times, so actually just a few more times, right? I can refresh in here, and I see that 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 8 across here. It's not actually giving me 12 across. But this is because Bootstrap wants to do standard layouts to make it look a little bit better. There's 8 across, but there's actually 10 items here. We want 12 items because I told you it's going to be 12 across. So we're going to do one more there. Okay, so now it's 8 up here, 4 down here. We want to change this, but as you see, it already looks pretty nice, right? The formatting of it is very nice. And if I break it down, that formatting continues to be nice. This is built into Bootstrap all the way down to this, right? So it's trying to make it as nice as possible depending on the size of the actual item. So if you think of each one of these as a column that could be up to 12, right? So I can actually change these to being column 1 to 12. So if I add that dash, it changes the actual size of it. So if I do it as 12 and refresh in here, no matter what, it's going to take that full row width. If I change it to 1, no matter what, it's always 1. So you have it divided by default into 12 columns. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of these in as 1. So let's go ahead and just copy and paste all the way down for each one of these columns. Little tedious, but it's to show you this is how it's actually laid out. if I try to add one more column to this, what do you think it's going to do? I save it or refresh, it goes on a new row. So it's not technically in a new div class of row, but Bootstrap makes it automatically go to a brand new row because of that formatting. If I break it all the way down, notice they are all still there. That's because column-1 is the minimum size. No matter what, it's going to be that width. It's going to be a 1 column wide. And the width of that column changes depending on the browser size. Also depending on the container that it's in, right? So if I actually copied this entire thing all the way up to the row and put it into the container fluid, we save that, we refresh. I'm going to actually delete that last extra row or column on both of these so we don't have any confusion here. But what we see is there's 12 across here and there's 12 across here. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 columns. And it depends on what container it's in and how it's actually going to render. Really, really cool. So this also means that I can play around with these numbers, column 1 and so on, which we will do, but we're not going to do it quite yet. I just want you to understand that this is very similar to like a spreadsheet, right? So we have a set number of columns. We can't make more columns, otherwise they'll just move down to that next row. So by default, it's always 12 columns wide. Always, always, always. So that means that every container inside of here has to equal up to that. Otherwise, we'll go to the next one. We'll see what that means in a moment. But hopefully you understand this. If you don't, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.